Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Ty Metalhead Weatherman. I hope you guys are having a good Sunday so far. Giving a brief update on some things. First thing is first, of course, we're going to talk about Fiona right now. And we now have Hurricane Fiona, and it actually did make a landfall on far southwestern Puerto Rico and is unfortunately bringing a lot of heavy rain and hurricane force winds onshore right now. It is looking to probably leave the area a little bit later tonight as it's moving at about 9 miles an hour to the northwest. It's starting to make its turn, just like we were predicting once it got to a certain point, to a certain intensity. And if you look at the forecast track here, we can see that it's now become a major hurricane. And Bermuda, I can now confirm that you are in the cone of uncertainty, so we're going to have to watch you guys really closely throughout the week. Sometime around the mid to late Thursday, looks like we could have either the closest approach to it or a potential landfall, and it is slated to be a major hurricane around that time. We'll see as time drags this thing closer, but you guys be prepared for a potentially dangerous storm. We'll go ahead and go to Radar Omega here and take a look. It's been a while since I brought this onto the equation, but look at all the heavy rain that's going on around that's going, and San Juan and all these other guys in Puerto Rico are on probably the worst side of the storm, the right front quadrant. That's where we tend to have the heaviest rain, the strongest winds, and sometimes on the leading edge we'll even get a few spin up tornadoes. But bad situation over here. Infrastructure is very susceptible to heavy rain around this region around Dominican Republic as well, but it looks like Dominican Republic may very well be spared a direct landfall. Unfortunately, due to the fact, well, we're getting all these sorts of paths on the feeder bands here, but it looks like the worst of these are going to remain offshore. There might be a few stragglers right here that may come onshore towards the tail end of it that may cause some trouble, maybe even a spin up or two. These most likely could be waterspout symbols for waterspouts. Yeah, they are, but I can't confirm them right now. I don't have too much in regards to using the Puerto Rican radar, or the Puerto Rican radar site, I should say. Unfortunately, I'll figure this out with time. I don't get to use Radar Omega much either, so that also plays into it. It's lucky to even be able to figure out how to find this. But unfortunately, with the landfall being as brief as it was, the storm is not really going to weaken. So depending on where this thing tracks, I do think it'll stay in this little strait right here between Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. So you will get some strong winds in Dominican. You probably will get a good bit of rain, but this will not weaken the storm. Only good news is that unless we get a direct impact for Bermuda, Fiona may very well be a fish storm. So all we can do here is hope for the best, but for right now, your thoughts and prayers should be with the people in Puerto Rico right now as they're going through this storm. And since we've gone over that, we also need to update the severe weather situation that's preparing to unfold in the Midwest. There's been a few upticks in the forecast. There's been no upgrade to moderate risk, thankfully, but if we look on all three of the parameters now, all of them now have a hatched risk, and all have been upgraded. We now even have a 10% chance of tornadoes along with the hatched risk, meaning that some of these tornadoes could potentially be from EF2 strength to EF5. Not good news at all. Not what you want to hear. So our basically our enhanced risk and hatch risk. This includes the cities of Burlington, Iowa, Ottawa, Iowa, Macomb, Illinois, Fort Madison, Iowa, and Keokuk, Iowa. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Then our enhanced risk for a tornado threat is Quincy, once again, Burlington, pretty much the same areas that I just mentioned. And we go to the hail threat, pretty similar area, now up to 30%. We had a this is actually the wind threat. We had a hatch risk on it. We had a 15% in a small hatch risk area that now has increased in size, and now we have a 30% area as well. This includes the city of Springfield, Illinois, and Quincy as well. We have Jacksonville, Illinois, Galesburg, Burlington again, Pekin, Illinois, and Macomb. We'll go to the hail threat, and this is still the largest threat of all three of the main hazards we could be looking at today. Also, we got to keep in mind, with there being severe storms, these have the potential to drop 1.5 to 2 inch rainfall an hour rainfall rate. So we'll have to watch for the flooding threat too, of course. But our main threat's going to be severe weather. I'm sure of it. And this enhanced risk and significant hail risk includes the city of Des Moines, Iowa as well. So you guys need to be on the lookout for that. Of course, a lot of the same areas that I've mentioned: Springfield, Peoria, Illinois, Davenport, Iowa, Iowa City, and Moline, Illinois. Sorry guys, I'm having brain farts left and right. I've been busy all day between this and doing music. But those are the main hazards, and those are the most recent changes. We'll go ahead and take another look at the parameters since time is drawn closer to the expected time of the outbreak to start. So we'll watch this start to really pick up around, what I'd say, 10, 11 o'clock. And we see an area here where we're getting close to that 45 to 50 knot mark here. So we convert that, if I remember correctly, we're kind of going to be closing in on that 60 miles an hour in the low level jet here. Very sufficient, more than a sufficient number to spin off a few tornadoes, maybe even a strong one. And there's plenty of, and it seems like from the last few soundings that I looked at, there's a fair amount of directional shear around this region. So this is going to be a very interesting situation. It'll be interesting to see how these storms modularly develop, like depending if there's a few more isolated storms starting out. That will most likely be when the tornado threat's going to be highest. We do expect these storms to eventually form into lines, and maybe even a bow echo. I mentioned that in this video, in the video earlier this morning. We're going to take a look at the Cape values. I expect maybe slightly higher Cape values. Some of these areas are going to be hitting close to 100 degrees today, so the atmosphere is practically supercharged. This is what you would consider an explosive environment, especially once you start doubling and tripling that 1,500 joules per kilogram mark. So the highest Cape is going to be about 8 o'clock, right around the time of sunset. We look around here. We'll even go ahead and look at the sounding to find the actual value. And we're sitting at about 3,385 joules. Plenty of juice in the atmosphere. Very good lapse rates. Curved hordeograph. This is an area that is indicative of a tornado threat. And this actually even registers on the significant tornado parameter as 3, so there is a slim chance of a violent tornado. And pretty much this entire region right around here is the area we're going to be watching extremely close. I think the further east you go, you're kind of leaning more towards the damaging wind threat, but the hail threat's going to be pretty high here as well. We're going to kind of hone in on the lapse rates as well. And from what you can already see here, this is where our highest lapse rates seem to be right now. In fact, we're going to go ahead and try to zoom in a little bit closer to where our area of interest is. Really should have done that earlier before I started the video, but I'm only human. But you can clearly see we have lapse rates of about 7, even 8.5 even. So I do expect some areas to potentially get some significant hail, greater than 2 inches, of course. We'll move this along. Hail rate starts to drop off just slightly once we get towards about 8 o'clock. But it doesn't mean because we're getting to about maybe we're getting down about a 7 or 6 that large hail still isn't possible. It's actually very likely still. But the higher the lapse rates, the greater the chance. So as the storms move out, the lapse rates kind of drop off a bit, and that will say a lot as to our storm threat, so to speak. Bad choice of words. So we'll go ahead and look at the bulk shear real quick before we move on to the potential radar image before we close out this video here. Trying to see if there's any sort of higher areas of shear, and we definitely can see that towards southern Iowa. I was concerned about this area earlier this morning as well, but you can clearly see what looks like a hang on, I'm trying to scroll down. I shouldn't have clicked the sounding here, making mistakes left and right trying to make the video quick, slowing myself down. Ooh, wow, that's some big numbers. We're getting towards 80, 85 on the bulk shear here, so this is definitely a red flag here. Definitely a valid reason for the Storm Prediction Center to up this to a 10% region for a significant, and a hatch risk for significant tornadoes. So definitely concerned about this area tonight. Move this along, and this area kind of expands a little bit too. It hangs on and goes a little bit further to the east, especially once we get to about towards the late evening hours. So eastern Iowa, maybe even the Iowa-Illinois line. You got anyone on the Iowa-Illinois line, you might want to be on guard because there could be some nocturnal action here. And this actually holds out even into the late night hours. So there still could be some spin-ups as far east as maybe central Illinois here. So we'll have to watch you guys real close. Hopefully you guys have a way of getting your warnings late at night. There's plenty of ways you can get your warning. There's local news. There's plenty of other YouTubers that do live streams, like Ryan Hall, for example. Be sure to give him a watch if severe weather starts to come knocking on your door. And of course, best way to get warnings is through a NOAA weather radio, and there's plenty of ways to get that. You could get that in your local grocery store, you could get them on Amazon, or just get them online in general. Now that we've talked about that, let's go ahead and look at what the radar reflectivity could be over the next few hours. Because I think within the next 2 to 3 hours, that's when I expect storms to really start firing. Yep, there, and lo and behold, there it is right there. The next 3 hours, here's a few isolated cells, and this is what I'm worried about. These isolated cells forming up in this environment right here towards southern Iowa, where the greatest tornado potential is here. And you can clearly see that shape, that little kidney bean shape. That's the look of supercells here. This could be a potentially nasty outbreak, especially for something so far out of traditional tornado season. I do always say that fall is a secondary tornado season, in my opinion, and it looks like we may be starting to see that coming into fruition here. So let's go through this loop one more time before we go. And you can clearly see the supercells even as far out as eastern Iowa, starting to get into Illinois here once we get into the late evening hours, about 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock central time that I'm looking at right now. And once we get to about 4 or 5 o'clock, we still are in we're kind of starting to transition into a QLCS type of mode, quasi-linear convective system. And then this tries to form into a line into the overnight hours. I do think it starts to run out of gas at that point, and eventually it will fall apart in the morning hours. But not before bringing some inclement weather to Indianapolis, Kentucky, and Ohio. So you guys watch out for a few booms in the morning. But anyone in this severe weather threat area, whether you're in that enhanced risk or that slight risk, keep your eyes open. But that's all I got for this video tonight. I'll have something for you guys tomorrow. We'll probably take a look at the forecast for the week. And we'll probably still keep an eye on Fiona as she's tracking further and further out of the Caribbean. But until the next video, this has been Tyler Metalhead Weatherman. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.